Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episodes 13 and 14 of this Legend of Korra, our big season finale. Sorry this review is going up a little bit late. This has been a pretty crazy week for me. I've had a friend's birthday, I've had the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who, and some pretty big stuff going on with my job, and something had to give, and it ended up being this review. So anyway, let's kind of get out into things. Overall, I thought this was a reasonably satisfying end to this season. The only real major problem was it was just so obvious that Unalaq was going to get to become the Dark Avatar, and that there was going to be some big fight between him and Korra. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with stuff being predictable, so long as it's done well. And these episodes are certainly very entertaining. They're very fun, but well, to put it as my friend Linda said to me, they're very anime. And of course, anime has always been a noticeable influence on Avatar. And again, there's nothing wrong with this. I really hate when people say, like, oh, it's a ripoff of this. Like, no. There's a difference between an influence and a ripoff. And a ripoff is something that is just a cheap copy and paste from something else with basically just the serial numbers filed off. Okay? An influence is, yes, you can clearly see elements or ideas, or yeah, it's pretty obvious that the people who made this have read or watched this, that, or the other thing. Okay? But as long as it brings new ideas to the table, there's nothing wrong with it. When there is nothing new brought to the table, that's when it's a ripoff. And obviously, Korra is taking a few pages from various anime series out there. You could probably even see maybe, I don't know, well, it would be probably wrong to say that there was some influence from Pacific Rim, because obviously these episodes would have been animated most likely well before that came out. But, you know, the giant monster movies genre, obviously an influence here. The fight between the Dark Avatar and Korra, I think it's fairly safe to say that a few notes from old episodes of Dragon Ball Z were taken, and I think I even spotted a little bit of influence from my personal favorite anime series of all time, Neon Genesis Evangelion, in all of this. And again, there's nothing really wrong with all of that. It's just it kind of felt like the show went a little too far in that direction. And Avatar, I think, works best when it's a series that clearly takes anime as an influence, but doesn't let that influence become overwhelming. It always has to be its own beast. And that's kind of my main gripe with this episode. That, and I'm still not 100% sure what it is that Jinora was supposed to be doing when she was in there floating around during the middle of the big kaiju fight. I might need to go back and watch that episode again. But, you know, whatever. But anyway, there were still quite a lot of really cool elements in this episode. I loved to see Korra use her fire bending to fly. She didn't have the blue flames like Azula did, but still pretty darn cool. And Korra definitely brought some seriously awesome bending into play this episode. Although her fight with Unalaq kind of does, before she becomes the big blue giant, sort of continues a trend that Korra sort of does not have a good track record at beating other waterbenders in fights. I mean, look at last season. Look at her battles with Unalaq. Yeah, Korra does not have a good track record there. Anyway, and it was of course nice to also get to see more of Iroh. Although it was a case of, Iroh, do you think maybe, considering what's at stake here, you could perhaps be a little bit more helpful? I mean, yes, it was cool that you would offer to show them out of the spirit world, but maybe you should help Tenzin sort of sort this whole problem out, especially considering the whole situation with his daughter's soul being lost. And you obviously giving him the clue he needed to find her. which sort of implies that Iroh probably had guessed where Janora's soul was. And, little girl's soul in the Valley of Lost Souls, you'd think that's something that Iroh would probably take a little bit more seriously and be more willing to take a direct hand in getting things sorted out. And of course, speaking of the Valley of Lost Souls, oh man, how awesome was it to see Zhao there? I just totally did not expect that. And of course, this is a very fitting punishment for him given what he tried to do. This is a place for people who have transgressed against the spirits. And yeah, Zhao has most certainly seriously transgressed against the spirits. Let's see. Not a huge amount to say about what was going on with Bolin and honestly, that was kind of after the awesome stuff we got from Bolin last time around. This whole thing was like, wait, you really were in love with Eska? I'm like, no, that was ridiculous. That really was. It's just like, Bolin, just go get a girlfriend. Get a real girlfriend. Don't follow your brother's example and treat them horribly, but go out and get a real girlfriend and, be a little bit more mature about it than this, because frankly, watching Bolin's thing with women this entire season was honestly just embarrassing to watch, really, and not in a fun way. Let's see. Oh, and hey, speaking of Korra, going back to her for a second, we talked about how she has kind of a bad track record of fighting waterbenders. You notice that she also has kind of a bad track record of when things look really bad, of just giving in to despair. I mean, last season it was sort of heavily implied that she was considering committing suicide after she'd lost her bending. Yeah. So here, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here for a minute. I definitely also liked what we had going on with Tenzin in these episodes, where it seems like he also kind of comes to an end of a journey. He finally, he has that conversation with his dad, where he's able to basically realize, like, I need to stop trying to be the man my father was. I need to be Tenzin. And this is good, because it really does that has really been Tenzin's great flaw since we were introduced to him, is that he can't stop trying to be his father. And it's, of course, a very understandable flaw. For a long time after his father passed away and before Jinora was born, he literally was also the last airbender. He shared a connection with his father that no one else in the world could understand. So it's of course perfectly natural that he would want to try to emulate Avatar Aang as much as possible. I mean, Avatar Aang as a giant basically has the Statue of Liberty of the Avatar world built in his honor. So yeah, it makes sense, and it was, of course, but I can't talk. But seeing Tenzin arrive at a place of peace, of gaining that little bit of wisdom that's apparently eluded him perhaps for most of his whole life, was a very, very satisfying moment. And lots of credit to J.K. Simmons. He really, really is knocking it out of the park with Tenzin. You can really tell that he's really digging in there and giving it his all, and I love that. Not too awful much to say about what's going on with Mako, other than, it was cool to see him ultimately get vindicated and promoted, but I still say Lin was kind of dumb for not giving him a fair shake after what he had done last season. And, of course, Asami gets the shaft once again. And, of course, I also like how this season actually sets up what's going to be going on next season, with the whole thing of Korra losing her connection to the past avatars. Now, this is a big question of, well, what does this mean? We saw what's happened when there was a world with no avatar for about 100 years, and things got pretty bad. Now, granted, the avatar's still around, she still has this power, but, what happens if it becomes public knowledge that Korra is the last avatar? After this, the world's on its own. What happens then? Now, granted, this isn't something that's gotten broadcast yet. Korra obviously is keeping that pretty close to the vest. But is it going to stay that way? And what does this new status quo mean? Well, that sounds like something that's worthy of an entire season, which we're going to be getting. And I'm definitely looking forward to it. So anyway, guys, that's all I have for you this time. As always, please comment, rate, subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.